Why is integrity important in writing?
In writing a book, you put your reputation on the line.
We're Roger and Carolyn Nielsen. We've done writing for a long time. In fact, we've come from a long line in our family histories of writers.
Yes, my mother was a writer. I have aunts who were reporters for different newspapers. So writing is ingrained in our blood.
Yes.
In this video, we will talk about retaining your integrity, which is the foundation of a good reputation, and how you do it as a writer.
There's a sacred covenant between a writer and his audience. You have to tell the truth.
A few years ago, there was a Harvard University student who wrote a book that was picked up by the publishing company, Little Brown and Company. The book was very good. The publisher was very excited about it until they realized that this student who had written the book had included several pages from the works of 4 prominent popular writers. The book was immediately canceled, as was a $500,000
second
payment on a second book.
Yeah.
And the story continues that it was destined to become a movie, and the movie producer canceled the project. It's a good illustration of showing how dishonesty can bring a person down. And it's not just in writing. You know, years ago, I was an editor of a magazine where I was in a hurry, I was on a deadline, I needed a photo for the cover. I went through our slides and I found this beautiful photograph of some kids playing in a playground outside. And we put it on the cover, and the only problem was that the photo was from Montana and I was working in Ohio. The magazine was in Ohio. We were supposed to only run photos of Ohio people. Well, somebody called me after the publication came out and said, "Where are those mountains in Ohio?"
Anybody who's ever been to Ohio knows there's no mountains in Ohio.
Well, not like Montana mountains.
Not like Montana. There are a few hills, but...
So I had to issue a retraction, send a letter of apology, and because in essence I was cheating the system.
This was a fairly minor example of a little bit of dishonesty, but it's not as bad as plagiarism. But still, it caused embarrassment, and it's something that you want to avoid at all costs.
I'm still embarrassed by it today. Never make use of another writer's words unless you ask for permission first. You know, you can borrow an idea, but you can't borrow the words in the way that author put them on paper.
So if it's a verbatim quote,
you need to ask for permission. Now, asking for permission is easy.
And most people are happy to give it as long as you give them credit.
When we were writing content, I wanted to use some words, a paragraph from John Steinbeck. I got permission by writing. Now, John Steinbeck died years ago. So I sent a letter to his estate asking for permission, which they gave me. It was easy enough to do. You're not going to get permission all the time. Some authors refuse that information for you, but asking for it is easy.
If you don't get permission, it's not hard to write around it, to express the idea in your own words.
Yeah, just like writing a research paper, find the quote, find the information, and then write it in your own words and add a fresh viewpoint to it. Now, Carolyn and I have written for a long time. You can find a lot of our information on the internet. We had when we were publishing our magazine, we had articles, photos up there for many years. We shut down the website 5 years ago, and today I go on the internet and I will find my photos, I will find articles that we have written on somebody else's website. It is flattering that they pick up our information, but it's also annoying. It's annoying because I didn't give them permission. The way that you control that as a writer is to write them a friendly little note and say, please take my information off your website. Or if they don't do it, you can involve your attorney to ask for them to cease and desist from using your material. But it's better off in the beginning not to use somebody else's material without permission.
And when you do use someone else's words or photos or whatever, make sure you give them credit. We probably wouldn't have been so upset if we had gotten credit, if those photos and articles had given us, that people borrowed and put on their websites, if they had given us credit. We would have felt fine about it.
We were happy to.
Yeah.
I mean, it is flattering, and we enjoy it, we like it, but just don't do it without asking me.
It's an integrity issue.
Yes.
It really comes back to integrity.
Another thing to consider is to validate your sources. What I mean by that is that when you interview somebody or take information off the internet, make sure that it's correct information. I'm reminded of the time when I interviewed a man, and in the interview, he was telling me about another man who said was deranged and he had done something. So in my chapter, I wrote about this deranged man who had affected the other man. Well, when that book came out, the wife of the deranged man who passed away wrote me and said, he wasn't deranged. I had libeled her husband, and she could have sued me. We need to authenticate the information that you receive, even though you're getting it from somebody else. You need to check it out.
The other thing you want to do is check the spellings. Make sure you're spelling the name correctly. Because if you spell the name incorrectly, you may be libeling somebody that you don't even know. And that could be very embarrassing.
Never call people names. It's not a good idea because you're slandering them. Now, there is one caveat, and that is a celebrity. Celebrities are fair game. Now, I still wouldn't call them names because they could sue you.
It's still a libel.
It's still a libel, but they have given up their privacy to be a celebrity. So you can talk about them. You don't have to get their approval on a quote. If it's on public record, it's okay.
We have a couple more points, but at this juncture, would you click the like button below if this content is helpful to you?
It's important to keep a record of all your interactions with your sources. This will help if there's any discrepancy that comes up in what you have written. You can always go back and check out what they told you. I've always tape recorded my interviews, partly because I don't like to write while I'm talking to someone. So I'll record it. And we have an excellent video talking about how to interview and how to do this in more detail. But suffice to say that record your interviews, transcribe them, keep a record of them. You won't run into trouble by somebody saying, well, that you quoted me incorrectly, because you already have a record.
It is a flattering thing for people to ask you if they can quote you in their books. One time, Raj and I were at a conference, and it was while he was doing his book, preparing his book, writing content. One of the women made a comment that was so good and so appropriate. It wasn't that it was such a wildly unique idea, but it was another voice, so it validated the statement that Raj was making, the claim that he was making. So he asked her very nicely if he could use her quote, and she said no. We were quite surprised. She probably had her own mindset issues, and so we moved on. But remember that when someone asks you for a quote from your book, if you feel that what they are doing is legitimate, give them permission. It just spreads the word on what you are doing and on your book.
And a word on foreshadowing. As a writer, you will, once your book comes out, you are now an author. And authors have different lives than the rest of us. When you become an author, your life changes. People begin to see you as an authority. They treat you differently. They will want to ask you questions. They will want to quote you. Our recommendation is that you allow that to happen. Our philosophy is, you can say what you want about me, just spell my name correctly. That way you are promoting yourself, you're getting yourself out into the public eye, and that is what you want as a business person, to let people know what it is that you want them to know.
If this video has been helpful to you, we invite you to watch another of our videos, What is the Structure of a Book?